Your Honor, I didn't know I was getting divorced until I found the papers in his golf bag. The courtroom fell silent. My husband's face drained of color as I placed the small black USB drive on the evidence table. My name is Rebecca Mitchell, and after 20 years of marriage, I discovered my husband was trying to erase me from his life without me knowing. I met James at a charity fundraiser 15 years ago. He was charming, successful, and seemed genuinely interested in my work as an accountant. Our courtship was a whirlwind: dinner dates at expensive restaurants, weekend getaways to coastal towns, and thoughtful gifts that showed he paid attention to the little things I mentioned in passing. We married within a year. The ceremony was intimate but elegant, just how we both wanted it. James's law practice was thriving, and my accounting firm had a steady client base. We bought a beautiful colonial house in the suburbs, complete with the white picket fence I'd always dreamed of. For 15 years, we were happy. At least, I thought we were. The first sign something was wrong came last spring. James started working late more often. His phone would buzz constantly during dinner, but he'd ignore it or quickly silence it without checking. When I asked if everything was okay, he'd smile that reassuring smile of his and say, "Just work stress, Becca. Nothing to worry about." I believed him. Why wouldn't I? Then came the business trips, weekend conferences that hadn't been on his calendar before, a legal symposium in Chicago, a client meeting in Boston, a consultation in New York. Each time he'd kiss me goodbye with the same promise: "I'll call you every night." Sometimes he did, sometimes he didn't. I found the divorce papers on a Tuesday. James had left for a 3-day trip to Philadelphia, and I was cleaning out the hall closet when I knocked over his golf bag. As I picked up the scattered tees and balls, I noticed a manila envelope tucked into the side pocket. Curiosity got the better of me. I opened it. The document's title hit me like a physical blow: Petition for Dissolution of Marriage. My hands trembled as I flipped through the pages. James had filed for divorce 2 months ago. The papers listed irreconcilable differences as the reason. There was my name, Rebecca Mitchell, listed as the respondent, but I had never been served. I had no idea this was happening. I sat on the floor surrounded by golf balls and legal papers, trying to make sense of it all. Why would he file for divorce without telling me? Why continue our life together as if nothing was wrong? The answer came 3 pages in. Assets. James had listed our marital assets as significantly less than what we actually owned. Our investment portfolio, valued at over $2.3 million, was nowhere to be found. The vacation property in Lake Tahoe? Missing. His partnership shares in the law firm? Undervalued by half. My stomach churned. This wasn't just a divorce. It was theft. I called James immediately, straight to voicemail. I texted, "We need to talk. It's urgent." No response. That night, I couldn't sleep. I paced our bedroom, wondering how many nights he'd lain beside me planning this betrayal. Had he touched my hair, kissed my forehead, whispered, "I love you," while calculating how to leave me with nothing? By morning, I had moved from shock to determination. As an accountant with 20 years of experience, I knew how to follow money trails. If James thought he could hide our assets from me, he had seriously underestimated the woman he married. I called in sick to work and started digging. Our joint accounts showed regular transfers to accounts I didn't recognize. Small amounts, nothing suspicious on its own, but they added up to hundreds of thousands over the past year. I checked our home office computer. James had cleared his browsing history, but he'd forgotten about the family cloud storage. There, I found emails to a realtor about selling the Lake Tahoe property without my knowledge or consent. There were communications with offshore banking institutions, consultations with divorce attorneys dating back 8 months. And then I found something that made my blood run cold: photos. James with another woman. Dinners in restaurants I'd never been to. Walks on beaches we'd never visited together. The timestamps matched his business trips. The woman was young, at least 15 years younger than me. Long blonde hair, perfect makeup, designer clothes. Her name was Veronica Dayton. According to the emails, she was a paralegal at a competing firm. They'd been seeing each other for at least a year. I sat back in my chair, the air knocked from my lungs. 15 years of marriage, and I never suspected. Not once. That evening, James called. "Hey, Becca, how's everything at home?" His voice was casual, normal, as if he hadn't filed for divorce, as if he wasn't planning to rob me blind, as if he wasn't sleeping with someone else. "Fine," I said, my voice steady, despite the storm raging inside me. "When are you coming home?" "Tomorrow night. The deposition is taking longer than expected." "Liar." "I miss you," he said. "I miss you too," I replied, the words bitter on my tongue. "Get home safe." I hung up and made 3 calls, to my best friend Lisa, to my brother Michael, and to the best divorce attorney in the state. By the time James returned home the next evening, I had a plan. I greeted him with a smile and a glass of his favorite whiskey. We talked about his trip, his fictional deposition, and I listened attentively as he spun his web of lies. Not once did I let on that I knew. Not when he kissed me. Not when we ate dinner together. Not when he suggested we watch a movie. For the next 2 weeks, I played the role of unsuspecting wife perfectly. Meanwhile, I gathered evidence. I photographed documents. I recorded conversations. I backed up emails and text messages. I tracked down financial records going back years. Everything went onto a USB drive that I kept with me at all times. James grew more distant as the days passed. More business trips. More late nights at the office. He was slipping away, preparing for his new life with Veronica, thinking he'd leave me with crumbs while he enjoyed the fortune we'd built together. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. James sat me down one Sunday morning, his expression grave. "Becca, we need to talk." I nodded, my heart pounding despite my preparation. "I'm not happy," he said. "I haven't been for a long time." The speech that followed was clearly rehearsed. How we'd grown apart, how he needed space to find himself, how this was best for both of us. When he finally said the word divorce, I allowed tears to fill my eyes. "Is there someone else?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "No," he lied smoothly. "This is about us, not anyone else." I nodded slowly, playing the part of the devastated wife, receiving shocking news. "I need some time to process this," I whispered. James looked relieved. This was going exactly as he'd planned. "Of course," he said, reaching for my hand. "Take all the time you need. I've prepared some paperwork, just a preliminary agreement on how we'll divide things. Nothing final." He produced a document from his briefcase. The preliminary agreement would have left me with barely 20% of our actual worth. I scanned it, nodding numbly as if in shock. "Can I think about this?" I asked. "Of course," he said again, squeezing my hand. "I want this to be amicable, Becca. We had good years together." That night, James slept in the guest room. I heard him on the phone, speaking in hushed tones, no doubt updating Veronica on his progress. I clutched the USB drive containing everything I'd discovered and fell asleep planning my next move. The following week was a dance of deception. James acted concerned about my emotional state while pressing me to sign the agreement. I asked questions about our finances that I already knew the answers to. I pretended to believe his lies. When he suggested we use a mediator instead of individual lawyers to save money, I agreed. The mediator, I discovered through some research, was a former client of James's firm. Another trap. At our first mediation session, I brought the documents James had given me and nothing else. I played the role of the confused, trusting wife. The mediator explained the process in simplified terms, as if I couldn't possibly understand legal and financial matters. "Mrs. Mitchell, do you have any questions about the proposed division of assets?" the mediator asked. I looked at James, who gave me an encouraging smile. "Actually, I do," I said. "I was wondering about our investment portfolio." James's smile faltered slightly. "We've discussed that, Becca. It's all included in the agreement." "The $800,000 portfolio?" I asked innocently. A flash of relief crossed his face. "Yes, exactly. Split equally, as we agreed." I nodded thoughtfully. And what about the Lake Tahoe property? This time, James couldn't hide his discomfort. That's included in the real estate section. At the purchase value of $450,000? Market values fluctuate, the mediator interjected. The agreement uses consistent valuation methods. I smiled. Of course. And the offshore accounts? The room went silent. James's face hardened. There are no offshore accounts. I met his gaze steadily. Are you sure about that, James? The mediator cleared his throat. Perhaps we should take a break. I think that's a good idea, I agreed, gathering my things. In fact, I think I need to reconsider using mediation altogether. I'll be contacting my own attorney. James followed me into the hallway, grabbing my arm. What the hell are you doing? He hissed. I pulled away from his grip. Getting a fair divorce, I replied calmly. You might want to update your asset disclosures before we meet again. The shock on his face was worth every sleepless night I'd spent building my case. 2 days later, I was served with official divorce papers. James had decided to move forward with his original plan, hoping I was bluffing. The asset list was still fraudulent. The grounds for divorce still cited irreconcilable differences. My attorney, Catherine Reeves, was a force of nature. When I showed her what I'd discovered, she didn't just take notes, she took action. We filed a counter-petition with the correct asset information and added charges of financial fraud and perjury. The first court hearing was scheduled for 6 weeks later. During that time, James moved out of our house and in with Veronica, no longer hiding their relationship. He sent threatening texts demanding I be reasonable and stop making this difficult. His attorney sent aggressive letters accusing me of delaying tactics and threatening to seek legal fees. I stood my ground. The morning of the hearing, I dressed carefully in a conservative navy suit, pearl earrings, and minimal makeup. I wanted to look exactly like what I was, a professional woman who understood finances and had been deliberately deceived. James arrived with Veronica, a public statement of where his loyalties now lay. She sat directly behind him in the gallery, her hand occasionally touching his shoulder in support. They whispered and exchanged confident smiles. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, called the court to order. James's attorney presented first, painting me as an unreasonable spouse, making wild accusations to extract more money than I deserved. Your Honor, Mrs. Mitchell has no evidence to support her claims of hidden assets. My client has provided full financial disclosure as required by law. These allegations are simply an attempt to delay proceedings and increase her settlement leverage. When it was our turn, Catherine stood. Your Honor, I'd like to call Rebecca Mitchell to the stand. I was sworn in, my hand steady on the Bible despite my racing heart. Mrs. Mitchell, Catherine began, when did you first become aware that your husband had filed for divorce? That's when I said the words that silenced the courtroom. Your Honor, I didn't know I was getting divorced until I found the papers in his golf bag. I recounted discovering the divorce petition, the discrepancies in the asset disclosures, the evidence of James's affair. As I spoke, I watched James's confident expression crumble. Mrs. Mitchell, do you have evidence to support these serious allegations? The judge asked. Yes, Your Honor, I do. I gestured to Catherine, who approached with the USB drive. This drive contains financial records, emails, photographs, and recordings that prove my husband has been systematically hiding marital assets and lying under oath about both our finances and the circumstances of our separation. The judge ordered a brief recess to review the evidence. As we waited, James approached me, his face ashen. What exactly is on that drive, Becca? He whispered urgently. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. Everything, James, everything. When court resumed, the judge's expression had changed from skeptical to severe. Mr. Mitchell, she addressed James directly, the evidence presented by your wife raises serious concerns about your financial disclosures and sworn statements to this court. I am particularly troubled by emails indicating your intent to, and I quote, Move the money before she notices. James' attorney attempted damage control, claiming the evidence was obtained illegally, that emails were taken out of context, that offshore transfers were legitimate business expenses. The judge wasn't having it. This court takes allegations of financial fraud during divorce proceedings extremely seriously, she said. I am ordering a complete forensic accounting of all marital assets to be conducted by a court-appointed expert at Mr. Mitchell's expense. Additionally, I am freezing all accounts identified in these documents pending further investigation. She turned to James. Mr. Mitchell, you are ordered to provide complete and accurate financial disclosures within 7 days. Failure to do so may result in contempt charges. Furthermore, I am referring this matter to the State Bar Association for review, as these actions may constitute ethical violations related to your law license. The look on James's face was one I'll never forget, a mixture of shock, fear, and dawning realization that his carefully constructed plan had collapsed entirely. As we left the courtroom, Veronica was nowhere to be seen. James stood alone, watching me walk away with Catherine. The months that followed were difficult but vindicating. The forensic accountant uncovered even more hidden assets than I had found. James's law partners, horrified by his actions and the potential damage to their reputation, pressured him to settle quickly and fairly. In the end, I received 55% of our marital assets, a premium the judge awarded due to James's attempted fraud. The Lake Tahoe property was sold, and I used my portion to buy a smaller cabin in the mountains. James was formally reprimanded by the Bar Association and placed on probation. As for Veronica, she ended their relationship shortly after the hearing. According to mutual friends, she hadn't known about his financial schemes and was horrified to discover she'd been part of his cover story. 1 year after finding those divorce papers, I sat on the deck of my new mountain cabin, watching the sunset paint the lake gold. My phone buzzed with a text from Lisa, who was driving up to spend the weekend with me. Almost there. Wine ready? I smiled and texted back. Glasses chilled, bottle breathing. I set my phone down and took a deep breath of pine-scented air. The betrayal still hurt sometimes, but less each day. The anger had faded, replaced by something unexpected. Gratitude. Not for what James did, but for what his actions revealed in me. Strength I didn't know I had, resilience I'd never tested, and the capacity to fight for what was rightfully mine. The USB drive that changed everything sits in my desk drawer. I keep it not as a reminder of betrayal, but as proof that even when the person who promised to love you forever tries to erase you from their life, you can refuse to disappear. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I hadn't knocked over that golf bag. If I had signed the papers without question. If I had believed James's lies and walked away with a fraction of what was mine. But I didn't, and that has made all the difference. The sun dipped below the mountains, and I raised my wineglass in a silent toast. To new beginnings, to hard-won wisdom, and to the power of paying attention to the details. After all, that's what good accountants do.